Hi, I'm Logan, and for my first quest here, I went to the Chazen Art Museum and explored the You Belong Here exhibit. So I'm going to start off by discussing three pieces that stood out to me the most, starting with the most striking one, which everyone's going to see here in just a second. But just so you guys know, I'm doing it in this format so you can see the accompanying plaque for the text, give you like context about the piece themselves, and you can see the piece themselves. I typed them up verbatim and included some pictures that I took. So let's start off right away with Laura Aguilar's Three Eagles Flying. Right away, you can see the Mexican American flags and the figure in the middle, which remind me of a callback to The Danger of a Single Story and how that flattens cultures, how narratives flatten cultures because they're torn between the two narratives of each country and how people are conflicted between those. And the mirror-like clothing, you can kind of see the reflection on there suggests that there are intertwined identities and kind of promote us to move beyond these stereotypes and the stereotyping between each other and have some sort of reflection and introspection on those. And it kind of has like a balance of stories between the two. And this piece also reminded me of The World is Spiky, which kind of discusses the globalization's impact on uneven impact on other countries. As you can look closely, you can see a noose on the figure's neck, and it represents the communities trapped by inequality and how her nakedness, as you guys can obviously see, is representative of the stripped resources and autonomy that these countries have forced upon. So right away, I was wondering, whose stories are we missing out of this, and what can we do to untangle these binds and truly see each other as people? So then for the next piece was Tara Krasnick's Contact Negatives, which immediately reminded me of Preparing for the End of the World as We Know It, which we just recently read, which talks about the modern day collapsing of colonialism and giving people a sense of empowerment with their history and culture. Um, Krasnick's piece drew from Lima's Market and in Peru's political struggles during her birth year, so she was adopted, so she doesn't feel the connection between her roots and history, so there's like a shadow of that. If you look closely, you can kind of see the blue tones in like the shadows of people. This reminds me of the corporatization of global education, like with Bridge and stuff like and companies like that. So this critiques kind of how corporations prioritize learning or profits over learning, which disconnects students with their roots and kind of has like a shadow figure of who they actually were and who they're connected with. And the blue kind of gives a frozen, icy cold feeling about those. And then let's hop over to the next one here. The final piece is William Camargo's An Attempt to Stop Flipping Houses. As you can see, if you look closely, there's traffic lights and moving cars behind the figures, which is the artist himself, which kind of the concept reminded me of the World Bank's Learning Poverty report. It kind of highlights economic and social barriers to education, particularly for the marginalized groups. And the traffic lights serve as a symbol of systemic obstacles like poverty, racism, and underfunded schools. So traffic lights are mundane objects that we see every day, and this parallels with the concept that these obstacles are just as common and work in the same fashion of stopping and letting people go at certain times while stopping others. The figure, who the artist himself, also reminds me of the idea of the balance between globalization and culture. So the plaque, if you look, explains that Camargo criticizes gentrification and labor history in Anaheim. So he's standing against the traffic, which represents the resistance of cultural erasure. So he wants to promote his own culture and his own autonomy within that culture. It also critiques systemic barriers imposed by global powers like the World Bank. So going against the idea of the corporate housing market and going against the corporate greed of making money and stuff like that. He's standing in the way of it. So collectively, all three of these exhibits demonstrate how the very common course theme of exploitation and capital are prevalent. So Aguilar's piece captures how people and nations are split into a frozen and suffocating situation where they must pick between being economically secure, working for the global north or Mexico, and promoting their own culture and identity. Krasnick piece builds off this idea as well, as she talks about how people are being colonialized, are being bent over the colonizers' knee and corporations' will. As a result, poverty and violence spur. Camargo's work also configures with this theme as his piece combats exploitation by transforming everyday urban symbols into critique of systemic barriers imposed by global powers.